Welcome to a deep dive. When we look at the sheer scale of human history, it's more than just dates and events, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's awe-inspiring, definitely. But it also raises so many questions.
Exactly. Like you read about something major happening in one place and you can't help but wonder, okay, what else was going on? Somewhere totally different. Or even from a different viewpoint right there.
Precisely. What were other people, other cultures experiencing at that exact same moment? History often gets filtered through just one lens, and you lose that broader picture, that objectivity.
You've heard one side, maybe the lion's story.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission here in this deep dive is to give you a concise but still really profound look at world history. We want to cut through some of the noise.
And offer a comparative view, right? Looking at key turning points, major developments, but comparing them across different regions.
Summarizing millennia, really.
Yeah.
But think of it as a deep summary. The goal is to make you feel genuinely well-informed, without getting totally bored down.
We're focusing on those critical moments, how they played out across different places, so you can expect us to move through history period by period.
And hopefully highlight some fascinating connections, maybe a few surprising facts along the way.
Sounds great. Let's dive in. So to kick things off, how do we even start? How do we structure this immense story? What are the basic frameworks?
That's the essential first step, yeah. Broadly speaking, we split history into two huge chunks. There's prehistoric.
Everything before writing.
Exactly. And then historic, which is everything after writing popped up right up to today.
And writing itself, emerging around 3300 BCE.
Yeah.
That was just a massive game changer, wasn't it? It completely rewired how people could track things.
Totally transformative. Suddenly you have a record. Okay, sure, it's biased by whoever's writing it.
Of course.
But it's still a record. Before that, for prehistory, all we really have is archaeology.
So we're piecing things together from, like, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey,
Right.
or old settlements on Java Island, making educated guesses based on what's left behind.
Educated guesses is a good way to put it. It's inferential. And that prehistoric period, the Stone Age, it covers such an incredibly long stretch of time.
And when you say long, you mean long. Almost 99% of human history falls into the Paleolithic Age, the Old Stone Age. We're talking 2.5 million BCE up to maybe 12,000 BCE.
Incredible timescale. That's when Homo erectus, Homo sapiens emerged. Fire was discovered, huge development. But yeah, first-hand information, very, very limited.
Then things start to speed up a bit, relatively speaking.
Right, you get the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age, roughly 12,000 to maybe 10,000 or 9,000 BCE. Then the Neolithic, the New Stone Age, 9,000 down to 5,500 BCE.
Polished stone tools and the beginnings of agriculture, right?
Exactly. And then a transition period, the Chalcolithic, 5,500 to 3,300 BCE. That's where copper starts showing up alongside stone. And for all of these, yeah, our knowledge is pretty much built on archaeological finds, silent whispers, as you said.
Okay, so writing arrives, 3,300 BCE. We step into the historic periods. What are the big ones?
We generally talk about the Bronze Age, then the Iron Age, followed by the Ancient Age, the Middle Ages, and finally the Modern Age.
And those first few, stone, bronze, iron, they're named after the main material tech, right? For tools, weapons.
That's the common approach, yeah. Moving to bronze, then later iron, wasn't just about better tools. It fundamentally changed societies, how power worked, warfare, everything.
There are other ways to classify history, I suppose.
Oh, sure, lots of ways. But focusing on the dominant material gives us a good, kind of consistent thread for comparing across the globe, rather than getting lost in purely regional timelines.
Good point. And speaking of time, let's quickly sort out the dates. We'll be using BCE and CE.
Right. BCE is before Common Era, and CE is Common Era. They're basically the secular or academic versions of BC, before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini.
Which means in the year of the Lord in Latin.
Correct, referring to the years since Jesus' birth. Though interestingly, most modern historical studies suggest Jesus was probably born around 4 BCE, so the scale itself is a little bit off. But everyone understands the system.
And the crucial bit, no year zero.
Exactly. 1 BCE is immediately followed by 1 CE. That trips people up sometimes. So you'll hear BCE and CE throughout our discussion.
Okay, got it. So our plan for this deep dive is to hit those major turning points, look at events happening maybe simultaneously in different places.
The rise of civilizations, yeah, cause and effect, trying to use that comparative approach.
This deep summary, hopefully, will give you a really valuable, detailed overview, connecting some dots.
Exactly. A high-level view of humanity's incredible, complex journey.
Okay, let's start that journey for real, around 10,000 BCE. This seems to be a massive turning point. the end of the last ice age.
Yeah, a huge shift. The climate gets milder, more stable globally. And across the world, human groups start this profound move towards, well, agriculture.
But it wasn't like flicking a switch, right? More gradual.
Oh, definitely not overnight. It took centuries, millennia even. Hunter-gatherer groups, maybe because the climate changed or game became scarcer or just the geography suited it, they slowly started cultivating plants.
Often living a kind of hybrid life for a while. Bit of hunting, bit of farming.
Exactly. It was often a mixed strategy for a long time. And it wasn't just one place. That's key. It was global.
So like the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, loads of wild wheat, barley, lentils just growing there. Made sense to start farming them.
Precisely. And at the same time, over in China, people in the Yangtze and Yellow River valleys are starting to cultivate rice and millet.
Mesoamerica, modern Mexico, early experiments with maize, corn.
Yep. And Africa, too. In the Sahara, which was much greener then, people were gathering and starting to farm things like sorghum.
This is so critical because it lets people stop wandering, settle down.
Settle down, build more permanent structures, and crucially, create a surplus of food. More food than you immediately need.
And that surplus changes everything. Allows for social structures, culture, technology to develop in new ways.
Absolutely. But what's really wild is how early some complex structures show up. Take Göbekli and Karahan Tepe in Turkey around 9000 BCE.
These huge stone monuments.
Exactly. And they seem to predate widespread farming, which suggests maybe religious or social needs were driving complex organization before people fully settled down. The level of coordination needed is just incredible for that time.
Mind-blowing. And then you have Jericho, maybe 8000 BCE in Jordan, often called one of the first real cities.
A walled settlement, yeah. Could be for defense, could be flood protection. Home to several hundred people. Revolutionary.
And over in China, Yahoo, around 7000 BCE, rice farmers.
Yeah.
But they also found the world's oldest musical instruments there, bone flutes.
Isn't that amazing? It shows that farming and cultural expression, creativity, they really went hand in hand right from the start. It wasn't just about survival.
Even in the Americas, slower start maybe, but you see llamas, alpacas being domesticated in the Andes, helping with early food production.
And that food surplus we mentioned, that's the key unlock. Suddenly, not everyone has to farm all the time.
So people can specialize, become artisans, craftspeople.
Or religious leaders, priests, maybe traders. And that specialization inevitably leads to social classes, hierarchies, more complex societies.
But it wasn't the same everywhere. Like Australian Aboriginal communities, they continued hunter-gatherer lifestyles for much longer. Fewer local plants and animals suitable for domestication.
Exactly. It shows how the local environment really shaped the path of development. Not better or worse, just different paths dictated by conditions.
There were downsides too, though, weren't there? Settling down, living close together, close to animals.
Oh, yeah. Zoonotic diseases jumping from animals to humans, that becomes a major issue. And large, settled populations are much more vulnerable if crops fail or disease sweeps through. Big risks came with the benefits.
Despite the risks, the tech leaps forward. Pottery, around 7000 BCE in the Fertile Crescent. Huge for storing food, water, maybe early trade goods.
Absolutely crucial. And weaving emerges around the same time. Linen, wool, clothing becomes more sophisticated, maybe even a status symbol.
And even before full writing, those symbols found at Jiahu in China. They suggest people needed complex communication systems pretty early on as society got more complex.
It's fascinating, though in Europe, this whole Neolithic revolution spread more slowly. Farming hits the Balkans around 6000 BCE, but Northern Europe stays hunter-gatherer for longer.
Culturally, though, this era sees the birth of mythology, art. Those carvings at Göbekli, the ritual items of Jiahu, they point to abstract thought, right? Collective beliefs.
Definitely. A growing sense of shared identity, ways of understanding the world beyond the purely practical.
Okay, fast forward a bit to around 4000 BCE. Complex societies are really starting to form now. Mesopotamia.
The Sumerians.
Yeah, Sumerian city-states are starting to emerge. Uruk, around 3500 BCE, becomes a proper city. Thousands of people, big temples, administration.
All fueled by that agricultural surplus from the rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates.
Exactly, and that surplus supports an elite class. They control resources, manage trade, organize the big religious rituals. And over time, you need specialists within that elite, right? Priests to track the surplus, maybe predict the floods or seasons for planting.
Absolutely. Priests become vital record keepers. And you also need soldiers. to protect the city's wealth from nomadic groups or even from rival cities fighting over land and water.
A similar story unfolding in Egypt along the Nile. Fertile land supporting big settlements.
Very similar process. You start seeing regional kingdoms pop up in Upper Egypt, the south, and Lower Egypt, the north, around 3500 BCE. These are the building blocks for the unified Egyptian state that comes later.
And Asia.
You've got proto-cities like Harappa starting in the Indus Valley around 3300 BCE. And in China, the Yangshao culture along the Yellow River is developing complex pottery and larger villages.
And these places weren't totally isolated, were they? Trade networks expanding.
Definitely. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, was traded all the way from Mesopotamia to Anatolia and Iran. That means goods are moving, but also ideas, technologies, cultural exchange is happening.
But with complexity comes new problems. Inequality. Conflict.
For sure. We see cities building walls. That tells you defense is becoming a major concern. Conflict between communities is clearly on the rise. Creating wealth also creates targets.
So summing up this huge period, agriculture leads to settled life. Settled life leads to complex societies, new technologies, but it's uneven globally.
Right. And the Fertile Crescent really stands out as a key cradle. It reminds me of Ibn Khaldun's idea in the Muqaddam.
A historian.
Yeah, about the constant tension, the struggle between settled urban societies and nomadic groups, a cycle of rising and falling power.
That dynamic seems baked in early on, and it perfectly sets the stage for the next big leap, the Bronze Age. All right, 3300 BCE. We've hinted at it, but now we hit the absolute game changer, writing.
The invention of writing by the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, it fundamentally changes human history. Full stop.
Cuneiform, right. Wedge-shaped marks on clay tablets.
That's the one. Started very practically keeping track of goods, trade records, taxes probably. Accounting, basically.
But it didn't stay just practical for long.
Not at all. It quickly expanded. Religious texts, laws, myths, stories, early literature. Suddenly you can preserve knowledge, transmit it across generations, across distances, in a way that was impossible before.
It allows for much more complex civilization, doesn't it?
Immensely so. And it's happening elsewhere, too, in parallel. Early hieroglyphs in Egypt, communication symbols developing in China, though maybe not a full system yet.
But there's a power dynamic here, too, isn't there? Not everyone could read or write.
Oh, absolutely. Literacy becomes a source of power. Scribes, priests, administrators who control information, they gain enormous influence, a new kind of hierarchy based on knowledge.
So writing is huge. What else were the Sumerians up to? They were quite innovative, weren't they?
Incredibly. Beyond writing, they're credited with inventing the wheel, the plow, the sail, developing early astronomy, charting stars, and early mathematics. Foundational stuff.
This is the era of the great river valley civilizations really taking off. Egypt. We mentioned the foundations being laid. Now they're building pyramids.
Exactly. The iconic Great Pyramids of Giza were built during this early Bronze Age. The Nile's fertility combined with a really strong centralized government that allowed Egypt to pull off these massive projects. Very different from Sumer, which was more a collection of competing city-states.
So Sumer between the Tigris and Euphrates, Egypt on the Nile, and the Harappan civilization in the Indus Valley. These are the big three early centers.
They're the major hubs, yeah, developing complex societies, cities, trade networks.
But the Indus Valley script, still undeciphered.
Still undeciphered, sadly. Over 250 characters, but we just can't read it yet, so our understanding is more limited compared to the rich texts from Egypt and Sumer. But we do know from archaeology that there were strong trade links between all three. They knew about each other.
What about other places? Were things happening elsewhere?
Definitely. In Peru, the Norte-Chico or Carlsbad civilization built large stone structures. Intriguingly, no evidence of writing or even much pottery there, a different path.
In Europe? Stonehenge? Malta.
Yeah, you have these incredible megalithic structures being built. Stonehenge in England, temples on Malta, huge achievements, but they didn't seem to support the same kind of large, dense urban populations as the river valleys.
And China, the Longshan culture?
Flourishing along the Yellow River, yeah. Known for sophisticated pottery and significantly walled villages start appearing. Suggests conflict is becoming more common, the need for defense is growing, even before a big unified state forms.
Let's zoom in on Sumer again. Life in those city-states.
Yeah.
Uruk grew to 50,000 people. That's enormous for the time.
Astonishingly large. And again, only possible because of the reliable food surplus from the rivers.
Which supports that elite class, the temples.
Right. A temple-centered economy often. And the need for priests to manage records, maybe predict floods, track seasons, and soldiers to protect all that stored wealth. both from nomads and from rival cities like Ur or Kish.
Because these city-states were competing.
Fiercely. Each had its own king, who was often a religious leader, too. They fought over land, water rights. These are some of the earliest recorded wars. And bronze tools are revolutionizing both farming and warfare now. Bronze weapons, armor, a big step up.
Meanwhile, Egypt takes a different path unification.
Yeah, around 3100 BCE, Narmer unites Upper and Lower Egypt, kicking off the Old Kingdom period. A single, powerful monarchy, unlike Sumer's patchwork of cities.
And that centralization allows for things like the pyramids.
Exactly. The Old Kingdom peaks around 2700 BCE. Massive state organization is needed. You have Djoser's Step Pyramid first, then the huge Giza pyramids around 2600 BCE. Khufu's Great Pyramid. Just think, maybe 2.5 million stone blocks.
Why build them? What was the belief?
Pharaohs were seen as god kings. The pyramids were tombs, ensuring their safe passage to the afterlife, which was central to Egyptian belief. It also demonstrated the pharaoh's immense power.
And the labor. Slaves.
Yeah. Probably not slaves in the way we think of it. More likely tens of thousands of conscripted laborers, farmers working during the Nile's flood season when they couldn't farm. Managed by a strong bureaucracy funded by taxes, it shows incredible state control.
Okay, back to the Indus Valley. Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, around 2600 BCE. You mentioned advanced urban planning.
Truly remarkable. Cities laid out on grids, sophisticated drainage and sewage systems, standardized brick sizes, really advanced engineering for the 3rd millennium BCE.
And trade with Mesopotamia. But still, that undeciphered script. A mystery.
A frustrating mystery. And in China, the Longshan culture, around 2500 BCE. Great pottery, those walled villages showing conflict, but still waiting for that first big dynasty, the Xia, which is partly legendary.
So these civilizations are developing, trading, obsidian from Mesopotamia going far, bronze tech spreading.
Ideas and technologies are definitely moving along those trade routes, though bronze seems to spread more slowly into Europe compared to the Near East and Egypt.
But even these powerful early states were fragile. You mentioned a climate event.
Yeah, the 4.2 kiloyear event, around 2200 BCE, seems to have been a period of severe, widespread drought across many regions, a major climate shock.
And it had real consequences.
Huge consequences. It's linked to the collapse of the Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia, the end of Egypt's Old Kingdom leading into their first intermediate period of chaos, and it likely started the decline of the Harappan civilization too.
Wow. So climate change could bring down empires even back then.
Absolutely. In China, the Longshan culture eventually fades, giving way to the Xia dynasty. It was a stark lesson in how dependent even complex societies were on environmental stability.
So the early Bronze Age, writing, cities, amazing tech, but also fragility. Vulnerability to climate internal issues.
That sums it up well. A period of incredible innovation, but also showing the inherent challenges of building and sustaining these new complex societies.
Okay, moving into the next phase of the Bronze Age, roughly 2100 BCE down to 1200 BCE. This is often seen as a kind of high point, but it ends dramatically.
It is a period of major empires and really sophisticated interactions. After the Akkadian collapse in Mesopotamia, the Ur-3rd dynasty pops up. Very centralized, big bureaucracy. But it also falls around 2004 BCE, sacked by the Elamites, again, probably linked to those lingering drought effects and migrations. Instability was common.
But then Babylon rises, Hammurabi.
Yes, around 1792 BCE, Hammurabi founds Babylon's first dynasty. He's famous, of course, for Hammurabi's Code, one of the earliest, most complete written law codes we have.
The eye for an eye stuff is what everyone remembers.
That's in there, yeah. But it was much more comprehensive, aimed at creating order, dealing with contracts, family law, protecting the weak to some extent. It tried to bring structure to a complex urban society, and Babylon itself became a huge cultural and commercial center under him.
And north of Mesopotamia, in Anatolia, modern Turkey, the Hittites are making waves.
Big time. They established their old kingdom around 1650 BCE. They were masters of bronze, particularly known for their chariots, which gave them a serious military edge.
They were a major power then.
Definitely. They had their own laws, diplomatic archives. They were highly organized. They traded with Mesopotamia and Egypt, but also fought them, a key player in the region's power politics.
And Egypt, after their intermediate period.
Egypt bounces back strongly with the Middle Kingdom, around 2055 BCE. Mentuhotep reunites the country, invests in agriculture, irrigation, a period of renewed prosperity.
But then they get invaded, the Hyksos.
Right, around 1780 BCE. The Hyksos, likely originating from the Levant, possibly Hurrian connections, sweep in. They bring new military tech, horse-drawn chariots, better bronze weapons. This actually forces Egypt to modernize its own army, but it's a period of foreign rule disruption.
But Egypt throws them out eventually,
Yeah.
leading to the New Kingdom.
Exactly. The struggle against the Hyksos kicks off the New Kingdom around 1550 BCE, arguably Egypt's most powerful and imperialistic phase.
This is the time of famous pharaohs like Hatshepsut.
Yes, Hatshepsut, a female pharaoh who ruled successfully, expanded trade, built amazing monuments, and later Ramses II, perhaps the most famous of all.
He fought the Hittites at the Battle of Kadesh, right? 1274 BCE. Huge chariot battle.
One of the biggest in ancient history. But what's maybe even more significant is what came after. In 1259 BCE, the Egyptians and Hittites signed a formal peace treaty, the earliest surviving one we know of. A landmark moment in diplomacy.
Wow. So even these superpowers recognized the need for peace sometimes. But Egypt's power eventually waned.
It did. The New Kingdom relied on that Nile fertility and strong central rule, but internal issues, economic problems, and constant threats from outside, like the Libyans and the Sea Peoples later on, gradually weakened it towards the end of this period.
What about Asia during this time? The Indus Valley,
Yeah.
you said it was declining.
Yeah, the Harappan civilization really fades out around 1900 BCE. Climate change, the Indus River shifting course are the main suspects. People migrated, leading to new cultural formations in northern India, like the early Vedic culture. The Shang dynasty rises around 1600 BCE. They're famous for incredible bronze, casting really intricate ritual vessels. And crucially, this is when the first recognizable Chinese writing appears on oracle bones used for divination by the kings.
So writing develops independently there too. Shang cities were centers of power.
Religious and political centers, yeah. But constantly dealing with warfare, trying to maintain control.
And the Asian. Greece and Crete.
You have the Minoan civilization flourishing on Crete from around 2000 BCE. Amazing palaces like Knossos, sea trade, making them wealthy, vibrant art.
But they get taken over by the Mycenaeans.
Around 1450 BCE, yeah. The Mycenaeans, based on mainland Greece, invade Crete. They adopt a lot from the Minoans, including a writing system Linear B, which we can read, unlike the Minoan Linear A. It was mostly used for palace administration, keeping track of goods. This is the era of early Greek city-states and kingdoms starting to form.
So this whole period, 2100 to 1200 BCE, sounds like a time of intense international connection.
Absolutely. You could call it a golden age of international relations for the Bronze Age world. Extensive trade routes connecting Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Hittites, the Mycenaeans.
Trading what? Bronze components, tin and copper.
Those were crucial. Tin, especially, was relatively rare, so controlling tin routes was vital for making bronze. But also luxury goods, timber, textiles, ideas were moving too.
And technology. Chariots become widespread.
Around 1500 BCE, yeah. The chariot revolutionizes warfare across the Near East and Egypt, a fast mobile weapons platform. And significantly, towards the end of this period, around 1300 BCE, we see the first serious development of ironworking. It's still rare and expensive, but it's the beginning of the end for bronze's dominance. Iron is ultimately cheaper, more abundant.
Culturally, this was a rich time too.
Very rich. Mesopotamia gives us the Epic of Gilgamesh, written down in its more complete form, grappling with life, death, meaning. Egypt has its Book of the Dead, elaborate guides to the afterlife. And in the Aegean, the oral stories that Homer would later weave into the Iliad and Odyssey are taking shape. Foundational myths and legends.
But then, it all comes crashing down. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE.
It's dramatic and devastating. Mycenaean palaces are burned, trade routes disrupted, the Hittite Empire completely disintegrates, Egypt's new kingdom is severely weakened and enters a long decline. Major cities are abandoned across the eastern Mediterranean.
What caused such a widespread collapse?
It's still debated, likely a combination of factors, a perfect storm. The mysterious Sea Peoples groups migrating and raiding by sea definitely played a role, attacking coastal cities in Egypt, the Levant, Anatolia. But also evidence of widespread droughts again, maybe earthquakes, internal rebellions, systems collapse. The interconnectedness that fueled the Golden Age also made the system vulnerable.
Ibn Khaldun's cycle again.
Yeah.
Nomads versus cities, a reshuffling.
It fits that pattern quite well, yeah. Established powers fall, new groups move in, power gets redistributed, the cards are redealt.
Even in China, there's upheaval.
Around 1046 BCE, the Shang dynasty is overthrown by the Zhou. They introduced this idea of the mandate of heaven, that rulers need divine approval and can lose it if they rule badly. a new political ideology, and they set up a more feudal system.
So this collapse wasn't just an end, but also a beginning, a transition.
Exactly. It clears the way for the Iron Age. New materials, new peoples like the Assyrians rising in Mesopotamia, Egypt entering its third intermediate period. The world is fundamentally changed, moving into a new era.
All right, we've entered the Iron Age, starting around 1200 BCE and taking us up to about 600 BCE. It begins right after that chaotic Bronze Age collapse.
Yeah, the immediate aftermath was tough. Those major centers, Mycenaean Greece, the Hittite Empire, New Kingdom Egypt, they were hit hard. Sea peoples, nomads, drought, internal problems. It was a mess.
Cities abandoned in Mesopotamia, the Aegean enters a dark age. Sounds pretty bleak.
It was a period of decline in many ways. Urban centers shrank, trade routes contracted, even the use of writing decreased in some areas, like Greece.
But the defining feature of this new age is iron.
Exactly. Around 1200 BCE, ironworking really starts to spread widely. And this is huge because iron ore is much more common than the tin needed for bronze. Iron tools and weapons become cheaper, more accessible.
So it kind of democratizes technology. More people can afford decent tools for farming or weapons.
Precisely. It has a massive impact on agriculture, but better plows and warfare. Armies equipped with iron are formidable.
And new powers rise using this tech, like the Assyrians in Mesopotamia.
The Assyrians are the prime example. They start building their power base, and the Neo-Assyrian Empire, really kicking off around 911 BCE, becomes utterly dominant. They pioneer iron weaponry on a large scale, develop incredibly effective, often brutal siege tactics and military organization. They create a vast empire.
Their capital, Nineveh, became a major center.
Huge cultural and trade hub, yeah. Famous for its library collected by Ashurbanipal later on, but known mostly for their military might.
What about Egypt? Did they just vanish after the New Kingdom weakened?
No, Egypt shows remarkable resilience. They enter the third intermediate period around 1070 BCE. It's a time of weakness, political fragmentation, even periods of foreign rule, like by the Nubians from the south. But Egyptian culture endures. They don't collapse entirely. They adapt and preserve their heritage, eventually starting to recover.
Okay, shifting east to Asia, China. The Zhou dynasty took over from the Shang.
Right, around 1046 BCE, they used that mandate of heaven idea to justify their rule. Initially, the Zhou set up a sort of feudal system, granting land and power to relatives and allies in different regions.
But that decentralization causes problems later.
Eventually, yeah. In 771 BCE, they're forced to move their capital east, marking the start of the Eastern Zhou period. This leads into the Spring and Autumn period, where those regional lords become increasingly powerful and independent, fighting amongst themselves. It's a transition that sets the stage for philosophers like Confucius trying to figure out how to restore order.
And India, after the Indus Valley collapse.
You see the rise of the Vedic culture, especially along the Ganges River Valley, starting around 1200 BCE maybe. This is the period when the Vedas, the foundational texts of Hinduism, are composed and eventually written down. Small kingdoms, called Mahajanapadas, emerge, and the early forms of the caste system start taking shape, structuring society.
Were they interacting much with the West at this point?
Less directly than during the Bronze Age peak, it seems. Asian civilizations developed somewhat more independently during this phase, but iron arrives in India too, boosting farming, population growth, enabling the rise of those kingdoms along the Ganges. Common themes, different contexts.
Back to the Mediterranean. Greece is coming out of its dark age.
Slowly but surely from around 1100 BCE. By 1000 BCE, you see the distinctive Greek city-states, the polis starting to form Athens, Sparta, Corinth.
And Homer's epics, the Iliad and Odyssey, are taking shape, based on older oral traditions.
Exactly. These stories spread, helping to create a shared Hellenic identity, a common cultural background, even though the cities were often rivals. And then, a huge unifying event. The first Olympic Games in 776 BCE brought Greeks together for competition and ritual.
At the same time, another group becomes really important in the Mediterranean, the Phoenicians.
Yes, based in coastal cities like Byblos, Sidon, and Tyre in modern Lebanon. From around 1200 BCE, they become major sea traders. Filling the vacuum left by the decline of Mycenaean and Minoan power, they sailed everywhere.
But their biggest contribution wasn't trade goods, was it? It was the alphabet.
Their absolute game changer. Around 1050 BCE, they develop a simple 22-letter phonetic alphabet. Much easier to learn and use than complex cuneiform or hieroglyphs.
And this gets adopted by the Greeks, and later the Romans. It's basically the ancestor of our alphabet.
Directly. The Greeks added vowels, but the core system comes from the Phoenicians. this massively democratized literacy. Suddenly, writing wasn't just for elite scribes, merchants, artisans. More people could learn to read and write. It hugely accelerated communication, trade, the spread of ideas, a truly revolutionary invention. They were also known for amazing gold work, by the way.
What about other continents during the Iron Age? The Americas.
You see the rise of the Olmec civilization in Mesoamerica around 1200 BCE, famous for those giant stone heads, probably portraits of rulers. They developed a maze-based economy, complex religious ideas, and really laid the cultural groundwork for the later Maya and Aztec civilizations. But large cities like in the Old World hadn't quite developed yet.
Africa, south of Egypt, Nubia.
Nubia becomes a significant power around 1000 BCE. The kingdom of Kush, centered at Napata and later Meroe, even conquered and ruled Egypt for a while as the 25th dynasty. They were rich from trade, especially gold, ivory, connecting Egypt to sub-Saharan Africa. They had their own distinct culture, influenced by Egypt but unique, with their own pyramids.
And Australia.
Aboriginal communities continued their sophisticated hunter-gatherer traditions, complex oral cultures, deep connection to the land, sustainable practices developed over millennia. A reminder that civilization isn't just about cities and writing, it takes many forms.
Okay, so by 600 BCE, where does the world stand? The Assyrians reached their peak, but then collapsed.
Yeah, they were stretched. Nineveh falls in 612 BCE to a coalition of Babylonians and Medes. This leads to the Neo-Babylonian Empire rising briefly as the dominant power in Mesopotamia.
We should mention the Kingdom of Israel here too, right? Important for later history.
Crucial. Established maybe in the 900s BCE, unified under Kings David and Solomon, Jerusalem is the capital, Solomon's temple built. Later it splits into Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Israel gets conquered by the Assyrians, and Judah later falls to the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar II. Its legacy is immense, obviously.
China's Zhou dynasty is weakening, lords getting powerful, heading towards conflict.
Definitely. Setting the stage for the Warring States period. And in India, cities are growing along the Ganges, paving the way for the first big empire there, the Mauryan.
So the Iron Age. New tech, new powers rising and falling, setting the scene for the next big era. Classical antiquity.
Exactly. A transformed world ready for empires, philosophy, and new religions on a grand scale.
Okay, classical antiquity. We're roughly covering 600 BCE to the start of the Common Era, 0 CE. This is an era that looms large in Western history, but huge things were happening elsewhere too. Where do we start? Persia.
Persia is a great place to start. The Achaemenid Persian Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great around 550 BCE after he defeats the Medes. Cyrus is fascinating, known for his relative tolerance.
Like letting the Jews return from Babylon in 539 BCE.
Exactly. A policy aimed at integrating diverse peoples into his empire, rather than just crushing them. Smart statecraft.
And under Darius I, the empire gets enormous.
Huge. Stretching from India to Egypt into parts of Europe, Darius, reigning 522 to 486 BCE, set up the satrapy system, provinces ruled by governors, built the royal road for communication and troop movement. Very efficient administration for its time.
But they famously clash with the Greeks, the Greco-Persian Wars.
Yes. Battles like Marathon in 490 BCE, Salamis in 480 BCE. Despite Persia's massive power, the smaller Greek city-states managed to win key victories. This was huge for Greek morale and identity, and really allowed Hellenic culture to flourish afterward.
Mesopotamia during this time. Babylon had a moment.
The Neo-Babylonian kingdom had a brief period of brilliance, yeah. Nebuchadnezzar II rebuilt Babylon, conquered Judah, destroyed the temple in Jerusalem in 587 BCE, but ultimately they were conquered by Cyrus and absorbed into the Persian Empire. Persia becomes the dominant power in the region.
So Greece, after beating back the Persians, enters its golden age. Classical Greece.
That's the one. Especially Athens. You get the development of democracy, pioneered by Crusades around 508 BCE, citizens having a direct say in government radical stuff.
And under Pericles, mid-400s BCE, Athens is booming culturally. The Parthenon gets built.
Athens becomes the cultural hub. The Parthenon is the symbol, yeah. But it's also the era of incredible philosophy. Socrates walking around asking annoying questions. Annoying but profound.
Definitely. Then his student Plato founds the academy, writing dialogues, exploring justice, reality. And Plato's student Aristotle covers everything: logic, ethics, politics, biology. His work shapes Western thought for 2,000 years.
Theaters is big, too. Tragedy.
Huge. Playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, exploring deep human themes, complex characters. It's an explosion of intellectual and artistic creativity.
But the Greek cities couldn't get along. The Peloponnesian Wars.
The fatal flaw. Rivalry, especially between democratic Athens and militaristic Sparta, leads to these long, devastating wars from 431 to 404 BCE. They exhaust themselves, weakening all the major city-states.
Which opens the door for Macedon, Alexander the Great. Exactly. Philip II of Macedon unites Greece. Then his son Alexander takes over in 336 BCE and launches this unbelievable campaign. He conquers the entire Persian Empire, marches all the way to India, down to Egypt, creates this vast but short-lived empire.
Short-lived because he dies young, 333 BCE.
Dies young, yeah. And his generals fight over the pieces, carving up the empire into several successor kingdoms. This kicks off the Hellenistic period where Greek language, culture, art spread widely across the Middle East and Central Asia, blending with local traditions. A really fascinating cultural fusion.
Okay, let's swing over to Asia. India, the Mauryan Empire.
A huge development. Founded by Chandragupta Maurya in 321 BCE, it's the first empire to unify most of the Indian subcontinent. Really powerful, centralized state.
And his grandson Ashoka is famous for converting to Buddhism.
Ashoka the Great, yeah. Reigned 268-232 BCE. Apparently, after a brutal war conquering Kalinga, he was filled with remorse and embraced Buddhism. He promoted nonviolence, built pillars, and scribed with edicts across his empire. He was crucial in helping Buddhism spread beyond India, across Asia.
And China. This is a time of unification too, right? Qin Shi Huang.
Yes, after centuries of the warring states period, Qin Shi Huang conquers his rivals and unifies China in 221 BCE, founding the Qin dynasty. He's known for being ruthless, but also for standardizing weights, measures, currency, writing, and starting the Great Wall. Created a highly centralized, bureaucratic state.
But the Qin dynasty didn't last long.
Very short-lived. Too harsh, perhaps. It was followed by the Han Dynasty in 206 BCE, which lasted for over 400 years and is considered one of China's great golden ages.
What marks the Han period?
Stability, expansion, prosperity. Crucially, the opening of the Silk Road, facilitating trade and cultural exchange between China and the West Rome eventually. And Confucianism becomes deeply embedded as the official state ideology, shaping Chinese society and government for centuries.
So Asia is seeing major religious and philosophical shifts too. Buddhism, Jainism in India, Confucianism, Taoism in China.
Absolutely. These systems of thought and belief really consolidate and spread during this period, defining the cultural landscapes of these regions. And the Silk Road isn't just for silk, it's carrying these ideas, religions, technologies back and forth, a conduit for cultural diffusion.
Meanwhile, back west, Rome is on the rise. Started as a republic, 509 BCE.
Yes, overthrew its kings, established a republic ruled by elected senators, and then, through relentless warfare and diplomacy, it steadily expanded its control over Italy.
The big challenge was Carthage, the Punic Wars.
3 brutal wars between 264 and 146 BCE, Rome versus Carthage, the other major power in the Western Mediterranean. Rome's victories, especially the final destruction of Carthage, made it the undisputed master of the Mediterranean.
But the republic gets torn apart by internal conflicts. Civil wars, Julius Caesar.
Success breeds problems. Generals become too powerful. Wealth inequality grows. Leads to decades of civil war. Julius Caesar rises, gets assassinated in 44 BCE. More chaos.
The Octavian, Caesar's heir, comes out on top. Becomes Augustus.
Exactly. Octavian defeats his rivals, and in 27 BCE, the Senate grants him the title Augustus. This marks the end of the Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. He ushers in the Pax Romana, the Roman peace.
A long period of relative stability and prosperity.
Pretty much for about 2 centuries. The empire provides security, law, and incredible infrastructure, roads, aqueducts, cities knitting the Mediterranean world together like never before.
But right at the end of this period, around the turn of the era, the birth of Christianity.
Yes, historical estimates place Jesus' birth around 4 BCE, ironically, in Roman-controlled Judea. A small movement starts within Judaism, but one that will have world-altering consequences, eventually transforming the Roman Empire itself and spreading globally.
What about other parts of the world briefly? Americas, Africa, Japan.
In the Americas, the Maya civilization is really starting to develop its classic features. Around 250 BCE, city-states like Tikal emerge, complex calendar, writing system, impressive pyramids. In Africa, the kingdom of Aksum in modern Ethiopia rises as a major trading power around 100 BCE, linking Rome and Egypt with the Indian Ocean. And in Japan, the Yayoi period starts around 300 BCE, bringing wet rice farming and iron tools from the mainland, setting cultural foundations.
So classical antiquity, huge empires, profound philosophy, foundational religions, growing connections.
Left an indelible mark, shaping so much of the world we know. But also, the seeds of future change and conflict are sown. Rome's sheer size, Persia's legacy, shifts in Asia, all setting up the next 1,000 years or so.
Okay, we've crossed into the Common Era, entering the vast sweep of the Middle Ages, roughly 0 CE to 1450 CE. A lot happens here. Empires fall, new ones rise, religions spread and clash.
It starts with the Roman Empire still in its golden age, the Pax Romana continuing for the first couple of centuries CE, but cracks start appearing. Then, a really pivotal moment in 395 CE, the empire is formally divided into western and eastern halves.
And the western half doesn't last much longer.
No, it comes under increasing pressure from Germanic tribes, Huns, other groups migrating or invading. It finally collapses, traditionally dated to 476 CE, when the last Western Roman emperor is deposed.
Ushering in the Dark Ages in Europe.
That's the traditional term, yeah. A period of political fragmentation, urban decline, disruption of trade, and the rise of feudalism where local lords hold power, offering protection in exchange for service and loyalty. A much more decentralized system.
But the eastern half survives. The Byzantine Empire.
It does, centered on Constantinople. It preserves Roman law, administration, Greek culture, and Orthodox Christianity for another 1,000 years. Emperor Justinian, ruling 527-565 CE, is a key figure. He briefly reconquers parts of the West, builds the stunning Hagia Sophia Church.
And codifies Roman law, the Justinian Code.
Hugely influential, yeah. Became the basis for many European legal systems. But his reign also saw the devastating Justinian plague starting in 541 CE, wiped out a huge chunk of the population, weakening the Byzantine Empire significantly.
Meanwhile, Christianity is spreading rapidly.
Massively. It had already been legalized by Emperor Constantine in 313 CE with the Edict of Milan. Then, in 380 CE, Emperor Theodosius makes it the official state religion of the whole Roman Empire. This fundamentally changes Europe's religious and cultural identity.
And as the Western Empire falls, new kingdoms emerge. Germanic kingdoms.
Exactly. Franks, Goths, Vandals. They carve out kingdoms in former Roman territories. Clovis, king of the Franks, unites Gaul, modern France, around 481 CE and converts to Catholic Christianity, a crucial step in linking Frankish power with the church. Europe's political map is being redrawn.
Okay, let's shift focus dramatically to the Arabian Peninsula, the rise of Islam.
A world-changing event. Begins with the Prophet Muhammad, born around 571 CE. His revelations form the Quran. The Hijra, his migration from Mecca to Medina in 622 CE, marks the start of the Islamic calendar.
And after Muhammad's death, Islam expands incredibly quickly.
Astonishingly fast. Under the first caliphs, then the Umayyad dynasty from 661 CE, and the Abbasids who took over in 750 CE, Islamic armies conquered vast territories, North Africa, the Middle East, Persia, parts of Spain, Central Asia, creating a huge new empire and civilization.
And the Abbasid period, centered in Baghdad, is known as the Islamic Golden Age.
Absolutely, especially under rulers like Harun al-Rashid, around 786-809 CE. Baghdad became arguably the world's leading center for science, philosophy, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, art.
Scholars like Ibn Sina, Avicenna,
Al-Khwarizmi.
algebra.
Exactly. They preserved and built upon Greek, Persian, Indian knowledge, huge advancements, and crucially, they learned paper making from Chinese prisoners of war.
Paper. Cheaper than parchment. Huge for spreading knowledge.
Massively important. It fueled the translation movement and the dissemination of learning across the Islamic world.
And Islam spreads into Europe, too.
Yeah.
Spain, Al-Andalus.
Yes. The Umayyads established a caliphate in Spain in 711 CE. Al-Andalus, particularly the city of Cordoba, becomes a major cultural and intellectual hub in Europe for centuries, a vibrant mix of Muslim, Jewish, and Christian cultures.
But like other empires, the Islamic world eventually faces internal divisions and external threats.
Yeah, internal conflicts, rival dynasties, and then the big shock. The Mongol invasions. They sack Baghdad in 1258 CE, effectively ending the Abbasid Caliphate. A devastating blow.
What's happening in Asia during these centuries? China.
China sees another spectacular golden age under the Tang dynasty, starting in 618 CE. Their capital, Chang'an, was probably the largest, most cosmopolitan city in the world at the time. Buddhism flourished, Silk Road trade was booming.
But the Tang dynasty collapses too.
In 907 CE, followed by a period of division, the Five Dynasties. But then China is reunified by the Song Dynasty, starting around 960 CE. The Song is famous for incredible technological innovation, gunpowder perfected for warfare, movable type printing developed, advances in shipbuilding.
India, the Gupta Empire's golden age.
The Gupta dynasty, roughly 320 to 550 CE, is considered a classical high point for India. Huge achievements in math, the concept of zero developed, then astronomy, literature, art. Kalidasa's plays and poetry come from this era.
But it collapses, leading to fragmentation, until the Delhi Sultanate.
Yeah, after the Guptas, India fragments into regional kingdoms again. Then, starting in 1206 CE, Turkic Muslim invaders established the Delhi Sultanate, bringing Islamic rule to much of northern India.
Japan, influenced by China.
Heavily, especially during the Nara period, starting in 710 CE. They adopt Chinese writing, Buddhism becomes important, a centralized imperial government based on Chinese models is attempted, laying the foundations for later Japanese history.
Back in Europe, Charlemagne, trying to revive the Roman Empire.
Kind of. Charlemagne, king of the Franks, united a large part of Western Europe. He was crowned Holy Roman Emperor by the Pope in 800 CE. He promoted learning, Christianity, a brief period of relative unity and stability.
But his empire breaks up after his death.
Yes, divided among his grandsons. This fragmentation actually strengthens feudalism, as local counts and dukes gain more power again.
Then, England gets invaded, the Norman Conquest, 1066.
William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, invades and defeats the English king. This profoundly shapes England's language, culture, and political system, solidifying feudalism there with a strong monarchy.
And the Crusades, starting 1095, Europeans trying to retake Jerusalem.
A series of military campaigns launched by European Christians, initially to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim rule. They had complex motives, religious zeal, political ambition, economic opportunity.
Did they succeed?
Temporarily captured Jerusalem, set up crusader states, but ultimately failed in the long run. However, they had huge unintended consequences, increased trade and cultural exchange between Europe and the Islamic world. Europeans rediscovered classical knowledge preserved in Arabic, learned about new technologies, spices.
Then a massive catastrophe hits Europe, the Black Death, mid-1300s.
1347 to 1351 CE, primarily. Bubonic plague sweeps across Eurasia. Estimates are it killed maybe a third, possibly even half, of Europe's population. Utterly devastating.
What were the long-term effects?
Huge social and economic upheaval. Labor became scarce, so peasants could demand better wages and conditions, weakening the old feudal bonds. It shook people's faith, challenged authority, a major catalyst for change.
And the symbolic end of this whole era, often cited, is the fall of Constantinople.
1453 CE. The Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II conquers Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. This marks the final end of the Roman legacy in the East and solidifies Ottoman power. Many historians see it as a key marker for the end of the Middle Ages.
What about the Americas and Africa during this long period?
In the Americas, the classic period of the Maya civilization with its great cities declines around 900 CE, possibly due to environmental factors or warfare. Later, the Toltecs rise in central Mexico, followed by the Aztecs, who build their powerful empire centered on Tenochtitlan, starting around 1200 CE.
In South America, the Incas.
The Inca Empire really takes shape later, established formally in 1438 CE. They rapidly expand, creating a vast, highly organized empire in the Andes, connected by roads, using sophisticated terrace farming. Amazing achievement.
Africa, beyond Egypt and North Africa.
You have major empires rising. The Mali Empire in West Africa, founded around 1235 CE, becomes incredibly wealthy from the trans-Saharan gold trade. Its ruler Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, with legendary amounts of gold, put Mali on the map. Further south, Great Zimbabwe emerges as the center of another significant trade network, known for its impressive stone structures.
So the Middle Ages end around 1450. The world feels poised for something new.
Absolutely, standing on the brink of massive change, and two things happening right around then act as major catalysts.
Gutenberg's printing press, around 1450.
The first spark. Movable type printing allows for the mass production of books. It's not just about books, though. It's the democratization of knowledge we talked about. Ideas can spread faster and wider than ever before, fuels the Renaissance, the Reformation. The information age starts here, really.
And the second spark, Ottoman control of trade routes.
Yeah, the Ottomans consolidating control over the eastern Mediterranean and land routes to Asia makes trade more difficult and expensive for Europeans. This provides a powerful incentive for Portugal, Spain, others to find new sea routes to the riches of the East.
Kicking off the Age of Discovery.
Exactly. These two developments, printing and the push for sea exploration, are key launching pads for the modern age.
And here we are, the modern age.
Yeah.
From roughly 1450 CE right up to our present 2025.
Right.
A period of absolutely dizzying change, global connection, and, well, massive upheavals.
It really kicks off with those two sparks we just mentioned. Gutenberg's printing press around the 1450s, revolutionizing information, breaking down old ways of thinking.
And the Age of Discovery really accelerating with Columbus reaching the Americas in 1492. Not just exploration, but the start of a Eurocentric world order.
Yeah, and the beginning of European colonialism on a global scale. Huge wealth flows back to Europe, gold, silver from the Americas, spices from Asia, land, but it brings utter devastation to indigenous peoples through disease, conquest, and exploitation. A very mixed legacy.
The 1500s then become a century of intellectual ferment and religious conflict, the Renaissance and Reformation.
Absolutely. A time of intense questioning and rethinking. The Reformation starts with Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses to a church door in 1517, challenging the Catholic Church's authority.
Leading to Protestantism, splitting Western Christianity, and religious wars.
Big time. Conflicts like the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648 devastate Central Europe, reshaping political boundaries and tolerance levels.
And the Renaissance, a rebellion against medieval thinking.
In many ways, yeah. A rediscovery of classical Greek and Roman learning, but also a new focus on humanism, on human potential and the natural world. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, scientists like Copernicus challenging the Earth-centered universe, Galileo confirming it with his telescope, Descartes proclaiming, "I think, therefore I am."
It's the birth of the scientific revolution, really. Human inquiry unleashed.
Precisely. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire is hitting its own peak under Suleiman the Magnificent, ruling 1520-1566. A vast, powerful empire stretching across 3 continents, a major player on the world stage.
Okay, the 1600s. Colonial empires really take root.
European powers, Spain, Portugal, England, France, the Netherlands are establishing colonies and trading posts across the Americas, Asia, Africa, exploiting resources, setting up plantation economies often based on slave labor.
And powerful trading companies emerge, East India companies.
Yes. The English East India Company founded 1600, the Dutch VOC in 1602. These become almost like states within states, incredibly powerful, driving trade and often ruthless exploitation, funneling wealth back to Europe.
What about major powers in Asia this time?
In India, the Mughal Empire, established in 1526, reaches its golden age under rulers like Akbar the Great, 1556-1605, known for religious tolerance and cultural blending. China is ruled by the powerful Qing dynasty, which takes over in 1644 and lasts until the early 20th century.
Moving into the 1700s, the Enlightenment. Ideas about rights, reason, democracy.
A hugely influential intellectual movement centered in Europe. Thinkers like John Locke in England, Voltaire and Rousseau in France. Championing individual rights, criticizing absolute monarchy, promoting reason and scientific inquiry. These ideas lay the philosophical groundwork for revolution.
And revolutions follow. America first.
The American Revolution, kicking off in 1776, inspired by Enlightenment ideals, leads to the independence of the United States in 1783. A radical experiment in Republican government.
Followed shortly by the French Revolution in 1789.
Even more radical in some ways. Overthrows the monarchy, declares the rights of man and of the citizen. Liberty, equality, fraternity become the watchwords. It sends shockwaves across Europe, spreading ideas of nationalism, republicanism, popular sovereignty, contributing to the eventual decline of old empires.
The 1800s bring another massive transformation, the Industrial Revolution.
Starts in Great Britain around the 1760s, but really accelerates in the 1800s. New machines powered by water, then steam. Factories, mass production, urbanization. It completely changes how people live and work.
Creates a new capitalist economy.
Yeah.
Shift from agriculture to industry. People moving to cities for factory jobs.
Exactly. Huge migration from countryside to cities. Rise of a new working class, often facing brutal conditions, long hours, low pay, dangerous factories. Charles Dickens captures it vividly. Steam engines, railways, telegraphs shrink distances, speed up production and communication.
And new ideas challenge this system. Socialism, communism.
Yes. Thinkers like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels published the Communist Manifesto in 1848, critiquing capitalism and calling for workers to unite. These ideas spread rapidly, inspiring labor movements and revolutions later on.
Industrial power also fuels more aggressive imperialism, the scramble for Africa.
Definitely. Industrialized nations need raw materials for their factories and markets for their goods. This leads to a new, intense phase of imperialism in the late 1800s. Africa is carved up by European powers after the 1884 Berlin Conference. Britain takes full control of India in 1858 after the Sepoy Mutiny, ending the Mughal Empire.
Germany unifies in 1871, a new major power in Europe.
Under Otto von Bismarck, yeah. Unification creates a dynamic, powerful, industrialized German state, altering the European balance of power significantly. At the same time, the Ottoman Empire is in decline, the sick man of Europe.
But some non-European powers adapt. Japan's Meiji Restoration.
A remarkable transformation. Starting in 1868, Japan rapidly modernizes, adopting Western technology, industry, political structures, military. It becomes a major power itself, defeating China in 1895 and stunning the world by defeating Russia in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905. A huge moment for Asian nationalism.
The U.S. Civil War happens mid-century too. Crucial for America, but also saw new deadly tech.
Absolutely. Shapes the modern U.S., ended slavery, but also saw the use of railways, telegraphs, ironclad ships, repeating rifles in warfare on a large scale. A grim foreshadowing of the 20th century's industrialized war.
So the mid-1800s feel like a period of simultaneous, intense change globally. Modernization, reform, conflict.
It really does. Processes happening across continents, setting the stage for the tumultuous, longest century, the 20th.
And what a century the 20th was, kicking off with World War I, 1914-1918.
A cataclysm. Industrialized warfare on an unprecedented scale. Empires collapse, Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, German. The map of Europe and the Middle East is redrawn, leads to the rise of new nation-states.
And the Russian Revolution in 1917. Birth of the Soviet Union.
Creates the world's first communist state, sets up the major ideological conflict for much of the century. Then the Roaring Twenties give way to the Great Depression in 1929, a global economic crisis, massive unemployment, hardship, fuels political extremism, contributing to the rise of fascism and Nazism, leading eventually to
World War II, 1939-1945, even more devastating.
Horrific. Over 100 million estimated deaths worldwide. The Nazi Holocaust. Atomic bombs used. A truly global conflict, an ideological battle between democracy, communism, and fascism, Nazism.
And after WWII, not peace, but the Cold War.
A new bipolar world emerges. The U.S. and its allies versus the Soviet Union and its allies, locked in a struggle for global influence, nuclear arms race, space race, proxy wars in places like Korea and Vietnam, espionage, defines international relations from 1947 until the Soviet Union collapses in 1991.
What about China during this time?
After the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912, China goes through decades of civil war and Japanese invasion. Ends with the Communist Revolution led by Mao Zedong, establishing the People's Republic of China in 1949, another huge shift in global power.
But the post-war era also saw positive things. The UN decolonization.
Yes, the United Nations founded in 1945, aiming to prevent future wars. Large parts of Asia and Africa gain independence from colonial rule. India and Pakistan in 1947 is a major example. Huge scientific leaps like the moon landing in 1969. Japan rebuilds and becomes an economic powerhouse. South Korea, too, after the Korean War.
So incredible destruction, but also progress. Human rights movements. Technology.
Definitely. Major strides in human rights, civil rights, women's rights movements gain momentum. Technology accelerates exponentially, and globalization really takes off, connecting economies and cultures.
Driven by the digital revolution. Computers, internet, mobile phones.
Starts gathering steam in the 1980s. Personal computers, then the World Wide Web becomes public in the early 90s. Widespread internet access by the 2000s. Mobile phones become ubiquitous, ushering in the information age. Information itself becomes a key commodity, like oil.
Which brings us to the 21st century, 2000 to 2025. Continued globalization, shaped by digital tech.
Immensely so. Social media transforms communication and politics. Mobile internet access changes daily life. Artificial intelligence development accelerates dramatically.
But also new conflicts and challenges, 9/11.
The attacks in 2001 shifted global focus dramatically, led to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the war on terror. Meanwhile, China and India continue their rise as major economic powers, reshaping the global balance.
And most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic.
A huge global shock starting in late 2019, early 2020. Millions died, economies were disrupted, daily life transformed for everyone. We saw an economic recovery in 2023, but maybe some stagnation creeping back by 2025.
And the big overriding issues now seem to be climate change and AI.
Absolutely, central global challenges.
Yeah.
How do we deal with the impacts of climate change? How do we manage the development and implications of increasingly powerful artificial intelligence? These are defining questions.
And looking just ahead, Mars colonization projects, quantum computing, genetic engineering.
These aren't science fiction anymore. They're active areas of research and development. Quantum computing, blockchain, bioethics surrounding genetic plating. These things are shaping the near future, maybe even creating what some call a new type of human, deeply integrated with technology. It feels like in 2025, we live as much in the data world, the digital realm, as we do in the physical one. A profound shift.
Wow, what an absolutely incredible journey we've covered. From tiny bands of early humans navigating the Stone Age to, well, to us here in 2025, grappling with AI and climate change.
It really is staggering when you lay it out. Millennia of innovation, conflict, cooperation, disaster, resilience. Humanity's story is one of constantly adapting, overcoming challenges.
We've seen how huge difficulties, collapses, plagues, wars, often, paradoxically, cleared the way for new systems, new opportunities, new ways of thinking. That relentless drive seems to be a constant.
It does. From the first farmers settling down to the scientists pushing the boundaries of quantum physics today, this deep dive hopefully shows that thread of transformation running through it all.
So, for everyone listening, grappling with today's complex world, maybe the biggest takeaway is that history isn't just about the past.
Not at all. It's fundamentally the key to understanding why things are the way they are today. And maybe, just maybe, it gives us some tools, some perspective for building a better tomorrow. It's our collective memory, our roadmap.
A roadmap to the future, built from the lessons of the past. We really hope you continue your own journey of discovery into this amazing story.
Until next time.